Hey there, welcome to saas.unbound podcast. I'm your host, I'm Nadeina, How to Grow the SaaS Group, a serial acquirer buying wonderful SaaS businesses to take them to the next level. And here I chat with inspiring founders and experts to get an inside scoop on how they made their business success. And today with me is Alina, co-founder and co-CEO, or should I say GEO already, like you called yourself in one of the podcasts, of Piper, the all-in-one demand conversion platform. Welcome to the show.
Wow, and I'm so happy to talk to you, especially since you already know our messaging and my title. I'm very impressed. I'm
I know, right? It's only
I'm
my
also
job.
very I'm also very impressed that you're calling me from Vietnam. I have beautiful memories from there, and I just imagine that I'm just there with you, on the sunny coast of Vietnam.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you're ever here, you're welcome. I can show you around. But I've heard also that you want, like, one of the goals that you have is moving to Asia and exploring Asian markets. Is that
I
still a
do, I
goal?
do. Yes, yes, yes. Because I think that building a business in Asia is so much more complicated than US, and all the cultural complexities are a curiosity that I want to explore. I like complicated puzzles. I would imagine SaaS companies in China and India. It's a next level of my unlocking of my entrepreneurship skills.
Oh yeah, I mean, once you're here, we definitely have to do another podcast because that would be really interesting to like uncover how you do this. But yeah, before we go to, further goals and what's next for Chili Piper, let's start maybe with your background a little bit, how you got to do what you're doing in the first place.
There were two things that got me excited to start a company. One related to my experience as an employee. I was a miserable employee. And the reason why I was miserable was that I felt that being in an office, in a cubicle with neon lights within gray walls, was not conducive to my best work, especially in software where you can really literally be anywhere and ideas don't come when you're stuck to your desk. They come when you're walking, they come in your shower. And I just felt that remote work for sure was something that I would enjoy a lot more, and we built a company around that. And the second thing that drove me was my experience also as an employee with enterprise software, with business software. I felt that, similar to my experience as an employee, was not conducive to joy. Like, you never think about enterprise software and you think, oh my God, I'm so happy to use that particular piece of software. I wanted to see if I can apply my skill set, which is that of cracking hard puzzles, to building software for enterprises that can be fun and a delightful experience. And I picked the B2B buying experience because I felt that I had some skill sets in product management, and most people who have those kind of skill sets in product management, they usually apply it to consumer software and they make consumer software more interesting. But no one was applying it to business software. So I figured it was a challenge worth going after.
Okay, that's pretty cool. And since you started talking about culture, I think that's one of the things that fascinates people about you and about Chili Piper, and you talk about it a lot. So you chose this culture that is very transparent, very empowering. Why did you think that that was the way to go? Like, I would assume that people would recommend you not doing it, or at least, not for everyone, right? And you also are saying that, every member of the team can contribute to decisions, whatever is going on in the company. And I wonder how it works, and if maybe you can share an experience or like an example of how it worked for you, that would be great.
The reason why we started paying a lot more attention to culture from day zero than maybe most entrepreneurs is because I equate brand with culture. And what I mean by that is that whenever you have a interaction with a particular brand, you're going to remember how that person that you interacted with made you feel. And whether it's in customer success, whether it's in sales, whether it's in marketing, and if that person is not happy with where they're working or where they're at, you're going to feel it. Even if they say the right words, even if they talk professionally, that kind of care for their customers and for the company that they work for, it's felt. It's one of those things that's unspoken. And Being happy at work is very hard. You get challenged by the ecosystem. Like, you can't always control what your competitors are doing. You can't always control whether your customers take a decision or not. And in addition to having an ecosystem that's hard to control, oftentimes at work you have different opinions than people around you. And if you have very strong opinions and you don't know how to manage those differences, it can be very disempowering. It can also be very you can also get disengaged if some people are louder than you, or if their style of communication is a bit different than yours. And most people don't leave companies; they leave their managers or their colleagues that might have a hard time with collaborating. So one of the most important process in a company is decision making, because if you are an individual contributor and there's any decision that gets made that impacts you, that you disagree with, it's really really hard to come on board to actually execute. And it also feels like you feel helpless, right? You feel like people are making decisions that are affecting you, and then you can't take, you feel powerless. And that sensation of powerless is very hard to come by. So we decided to put everything that we do in documenting it, not making decisions live with voice on a Zoom call, but documenting so that there's less emotion around it. It's a bit hard because you get like hundreds and hundreds of documents that circulate around your desk, and you have to understand the complexities of every decision. But you can contribute, your voice can be heard, and at the end you can understand how that decision came about. If you see our documents, they're insane, a lot of them, especially like even the positioning one. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, since you mentioned, how decision making can be emotional, and well, working with people is emotional, right? And I'm going to address something that happened in 2021 that I know was very emotional for you. Is the time when you had to lay off quite a lot of people in the company, and how did it affect you personally? The team dynamic, and what were the lessons learned? Like, are you staying leaner? Are you hiring slower? Like, what is the situation now?
It was a super interesting journey. So when we started, we were bootstrapped. So every dollar that we would spend was very well calculated ahead of time, and everything that went out had to have an impact, and we had to understand that impact. When we raise VC money, that kind of rigor around spending changed, because when you get a lot of capital, that capital has to go out to make bigger bets. And when you see the entire ecosystem spending the way they're spending, you have the same constraints from your board and from your shareholders, and to make the same kind of bets. The problem with that is that you get ahead, right? You start spending a lot more than the company can make, assuming that there's a long-term gain. But because the entire industry has shifted towards efficiencies, we had to make this super hard call in November 2021. And at that time, I'd also had given birth to two boys. And what happens is that once I became a mom, my mind shifted from that of a contributor and a collaborator to that of a protector, because I wanted to protect my babies at all costs. I also felt the same way with my employees. And I literally felt like I was the worst failure of a person that you can think of. I had so much violence, internal violence towards myself for a long time, and I kept trying, saying, as hard as you have it, your employees they have it harder than you, because now they have to find a job, and some of them have their entire family to depend on it. And in US, it's a lot heavier than in Europe, because there's the support system is constructed in a way that doesn't protect families. Like, there's no healthcare, and for children there's no childcare and so forth. That's free. So it's a lot more painful as a parent, especially. And I felt like a failure, and I still have to deal with my demons inside, because in my mind I expect that at all times I can guarantee employment for everybody, and I can run a business in which everybody stays employed. Frankly, I have that delusion that I can take care of like everybody, like everybody in the planet I can take care of. But it's a delusion, because I have limited capacity, and I can do whatever I can do at that moment in time with my experience to build a company that I have. And the only way to make sure that to the next stage we have resilience and we don't have this kind of hard things that happen in the company is to make sure that the company creates systems in which we can be a lot more, all our responsibilities shared, because it can't fall on me, it can't fall on one particular person. Because I have failures. I'm completely imperfect. However, if we operate better as a system, we're in much better position. So that's what I'm working on right now, to make sure that those systems are a lot more resilient.
Okay. And are you growing the team? Are you keeping it smaller this time?
We're still hiring. We're still adding people to our headcount, but we're a lot more mindful with making sure that whenever we're adding someone to the team, that impact on the company growth is there. And we're taking a long time to open a role than we've done in the past. And with the team that's inside, we often like every day I think about how to optimize for efficiencies to make sure that uh, everyone's impact is understood and we know what actions to take to make sure that we're not wasteful.
Right, that makes sense. I also wanted to ask you about growing people inside the team because I think you made a remark about that in one of the podcasts or interviews once. And we talk about it a lot here on the podcast. And some founders are very firm on the fact that you cannot really grow people. You cannot really succeed with people that helped you go from zero to one. So, how do you make sure that your starters are becoming your scalers as well?
We have a lot of employees that stayed with us from the beginning within the company, and we're unusual in that we're a lot more. Our organization is a lot more flat than traditional hierarchical organizations. And when you're flat, every node has its strength that it can contribute to the system. And even your early employees have a lot of knowledge and a lot of strength. And the question is mostly how you organize yourself around those strengths and have some fluidity in how the roles are constructed. Because yes, you might grow and you might need different kind of skills and you can hire for those. But that doesn't mean that people who have been with you from the beginning, who have other strengths, can't contribute in the same way, and maybe even greater because they have the historical knowledge of where the keys are hidden. So I think that in our case it works, and we continue to grow with our first employees because of this unusual setup of flat layout, a flat organization.
Okay, that's fascinating. So yeah, let's talk about your marketing because well, it's yeah, it's again something that a lot of people find very interesting, me included. And apparently, you don't work with marketing budgets. You do experiments. How do you what do you mean by that? How does it work for you, and how do you determine, if if everything kind of seems fine, everything kind of seems to perform. How do you still prioritize?
So we do some financial planning. So ahead of the year, we reserve some time to project certain expectations in terms of AR, in terms of spend, based on historical data. But oftentimes, when you do this kind of planning, it's a failed mindset because, and then that's based on my experience as an employee. You get to December, you've not spent $1 million, and you hurry to spend wastefully that $1 million. So there is a wrong incentive when you do that kind of financial planning. And also, historical data doesn't mean that you can repeat, especially in marketing. It doesn't mean that you can repeat the same kind of experiments that you've done last year, because things don't work anymore the same way as they did. And tweaking this framework is something that we do on an ongoing basis. So when cash that we've predicted that goes out, we put a lot of checks and balances to make sure, does this still make sense? Does this spend still make sense in the light of what's going on? And the prioritization, we do it at the beginning of the quarter. We assume that we're going to do some certain activities based on what we've done in the past. There's always room for something new that might not be predictable. For instance, we see something that a new trend emerging and we might want to invest in it, or we might see an influencer that's up and coming that we might want to collaborate with. So there's I would say about 60 to 70% is predictable because we know certain things work, and about 30% is experimented. Can't pronounce it. Experiential, experimental, experiment. That's the word.
That's good. I was listening to this podcast with Jason Fried, and he was also talking about that, like experiments and not really having budgets. And I really loved what he said. He said, I don't want to work on something that I thought I want to work on something that I think now. So I guess that comes to your experimentation strategy. Now it's going to haunt me. But talking about experiments and talking about different things that you experiment with, what are the unscalable things that maybe you used to do when you were still bootstrapped, but took with you and are still doing when you raise the funds, and what works for you?
So there are two things that I did from day zero and I still continue to do. One of them is even though our company is remote and we all meet on Zoom, we still very strong believers that interactions in person are critical to forming relationships with our customers, with our partners, with our prospects. And we continue to go to events a lot. Even myself, I go to a lot of events. You'll see me in many places where our ICP is. And another part that we've kept from day zero is our ability to have ripple effects with people that are most impactful in our ecosystem. And that has evolved a bit because our product has evolved, our ICPs has evolved. So we constantly seek to work with people that are have the most influences in and have most ripple effects. So, for instance, one of our first customers at the early days was someone by the name of Kevin Dorsey. Kevin Dorsey is now on LinkedIn somewhat of a personality. I think that he has like 160 followers, something like that. He's an amazing person, and he's become a friend as well. But he was one of the people that shaped our product, shaped our strategy, and we continue to make sure that we understand how the people that have this kind of effect in the ecosystem are continuing to change our industry.
Yeah, and talking about events, I think you started selling Chili Piper or the idea of Chili Piper there was still no solution ready at events, going to people. And how, like, that was my question actually, how much those people that you approached that said yes have shaped the product into what it is now or what it was back then, and how much of it was your initial idea and your long-term vision?
It was mostly driven by customers. So I think that one thing that founders get tripped with is thinking that they know better, and to some extent there is some of that. So if you look at Henry Ford, he had this vision that he can make cars that were faster than horses, and if you would have asked his customers, they would have said no, let's make faster horses. So there's still this push that comes from the founder with a specific vision, but along the side of that vision, keeping contact with how customers are understanding their operations and their relationships with internal stakeholders, especially because we sell to groups, right? We don't I don't when you're selling to B2B, you don't sell to one particular person. The entire group has to make that decision together. And there are a lot of subtleties in that. So I relied heavily on understanding how the person that said, yes, I'll buy from you and I'll pay a year in advance, could sell that to their boss or could sell that to their peers. And there were certain things within the product that would make it so. And I focused on how the product can evolve with that mindset in the back of my head.
And how does it work now? How does the feature prioritization work? Is it also driven mostly by customers, or is it more of your vision, less of your vision?
We have a system in place, and I'm forgetting what software we use for that. Maybe User Voice, something like that, where we everyone in the company can upvote certain roadmap items, and we see the impact on AR because we see that there's a deal that's open around it, or there's a customer that's requesting that particular feature. So there's AR that's attributed to specific features, and then there's perceived AR. So we have to calculate based on data that we have that the specific feature might actually contribute a lot more than we actually see in the ecosystem, because we see customers responding to that of our competitor product, or we see people talking about it in communities. That's a bit harder to quantify. but there's still a lot of quantitative and qualitative research that we do. We have Taylor in our team. She does amazing research around these things and predictions about what can change the impact of our roadmap or not.
Okay, fascinating. And I believe you said that once at those events you had 10 people telling you that they would buy the product, you knew you had a business. Do you remember how many of those people actually bought the product when you built the tool?
So I was very careful when I would ask them is to put in front of them the contract. So I would say, yes, you pay. This is the contract. This is how much it costs. Would you prepay now if it would be ready by a certain date? So there would be conditioning before I would actually go and build it, and that's how we got them to sign.
Okay,
It's
you were
pretty.
like, show me the money. Okay, that's fun. All right, so since then, uh, giving people a contract and asking them to prepay before even the solution was there, how has your customer acquisition strategy changed?
At the beginning, it was just five of us. So our customer strategy could only scale to the five of us. And it was mostly events and our ability to be in certain communities. As we brought more people on board, we started being participating in other channels as well. Right now, we have ecosystem partnerships, we have channel partnerships, we have customer advisory board, we have a lot of advocacy programs. We have a paid. We're creating content, so we're a lot in many more channels than we used to, and that helps a lot because customers they only buy when you have multiple touches, and you can't rely on one touch to have that special magical power to move someone to a decision.
Yeah, that's true. And well, I wanted to also ask you, of course, about your personal story. And I mentioned at the beginning that maybe I should call you GEO, right? Is it a guide executive officer, something like that? You said on one of your previous podcasts. What does it mean? Why did you decide that this is something different that you want to again experiment with?
I didn't pull the trigger yet to call myself that. The reason why I'm experimenting with not calling myself chief executive officer is because of what I expressed earlier, is that in hierarchical organization, this idea of a chief, someone who has power over the system and make all the decisions and ultimately is the one that knows everything, it just doesn't work in practice because, as I said, we're all imperfect. And a much better system is one in which responsibility is shared. And I can only, in that kind of system, I can only be a guide, I can only be a coach based on all the things that I'm doing. So it just changes the mindset from that of ultimate power to that of participating power, because I'm just a colleague like them, and yes, I might see more things, and yes, I might have access to multiple touch points that our customers has, but I'm not all knowing. I can only be a guide in creating the system that thrives.
What in this journey, from this is your first business, right? How has what kind of mindset shift have you gone through, and what was the most challenging in that growth from bootstrapping this small tool to being a CEO of almost a unicorn?
We've gone through many stages, and at every stage, I had to learn something completely new. I come from an engineering background, and the only thing that I knew was to build a product. And you might say that that's very valuable. However, in building a company, that's just one part of it. I knew nothing about culture. I knew nothing about brand. I knew nothing about so many things. And I had to learn on the job while the plane is flying, and I had to build all the all the pieces in the process. And I realized that my biggest weaknesses came from my conditioning, the things that shaped me as a child. And for instance, I come from Romania, and culture in Romania is very different than that of US, where, for instance, teachers have a lot of power over you, and you do as you're told. So I had a lot of issues with rules and how rules are being imposed on others. So I kept questioning them. And at the same time, I felt like I need to obey them. So if someone would tell me that's how you do things, I would try to go that path. So this kind of conditioning that we have as children are the things that prevent us from being the best version of ourselves, and identifying what my limitations and what my conditionings have been has been hard. And the only way I've managed to see things that I wasn't able to see is by surrounding myself with people who would be open in giving me that kind of feedback. And that's hard for most people because they typically, especially if you're in the position that I am, they will tell you what you want to hear. So right now, yeah, I have two coaches and my husband that is also coaching me to some extent. I have a lot of CEO groups where I keep questioning certain things that I'm doing, surrounding myself with a lot of peers that keep questioning, and I keep asking questions about things that I do just out of default to see if there's a better way, or if there's something that is specific to my limitations, is something that has helped me the most.
Okay, thank you. Well, and I guess one of your recent journeys or learnings is building your own brand and going out there, sharing a lot on LinkedIn. How has it been working for you? And if maybe you have an advice for earlier stage founders, like how to make it work, maybe you could share it too.
For sure, posting on LinkedIn has been terrifying to me. I imagine my first years where I would say I'm not touching it. I'm not going to be talking to journalists. I'm not going to be on stage. I'm not going to be the face of the company because I felt very uncomfortable with the idea. I'd be afraid that my language, especially because I'm an engineer, my communication style is, especially at those times where it was a little bit limited and awkward. And I've never focused on writing at all. So I was really concerned of how I would come across and like maybe tarnish the brand or maybe have the wrong associations. I was quiet for the longest time. But then I had this big epiphany that my voice can actually do good, and not only in the realm of the business, but outside of it on topics on causes that I care deeply about. And when I realized that my voice can be used in ways to have a positive impact, then I found a lot more strength in it. At the beginning, it was challenging. I would post every day, and a lot of it was crap. But I allowed myself to form the muscle, and I would just click on publish, and I clicked on publish, and every time I would have a knot in my stomach, and every time I would feel as uncomfortable as you can imagine. Eventually, you learn to just not think of it anymore. So now I am not thinking about it, and I see that I learned a lot. I learned a lot. I learned so much by posting on social media. I could have never imagined the benefits from it.
Yeah, for sure. And well, maybe an uncanny question, but out of you two, right? You're a husband and wife duo and a co-founders, co-CEOs duo. How did you decide? You have different skill sets. Who is going to be the face of the company? Who is going to be the voice of the company? Because, well, it was very uncomfortable for you. And just judging by what you just said, that your husband partially coaches you also about that stuff. Why did you decide to step forward?
So when we started, the company, he was the CRO and I was the CEO. That was the setup initially. When I gave birth, he was the CEO, I was the CPO. Now we're co-CEOs, and he thrives by being the face of the company. If I put him on stage, he loves it. He gets energized by it. So he was a natural at it. So he would have been a much better option than me. And he was at the beginning. He was the one doing all the events and all the podcasts. And I felt that that was the right thing at that time. With As we evolved, I'm noticing that he, at this moment in time, he has a much bigger impact internally with the team. He loves putting systems in place. He loves creating this culture with me. So it just evolved so in a way that I've allowed myself to feel comfortable with it and learn from it. And now he has a lot more joy from the internal work. It might change. We might swap at some point. And I think that's the beauty of having a co-CEO, is that you keep evolving. And there's certain things that he likes and there's certain things that I like. And we can use one another as a lever to make sure that at all times we don't get burned out and we only work on things that bring us joy.
Absolutely. And I want to, of course, ask you about, your feeling of being, a female CEO, a female founder, because I've had for the entirety of this podcast, I've had the hardest time getting female founders here because usually the priority is different or the timing is not right, and or I don't have enough experience, even though I would have male founders who've had well, the same amount, at least in time, of experiences as they would. And I just noticed this uncertainty from female founders when it comes to public speaking and just speaking about their products. What would be maybe your message to them, and how what helped you overcome this fear and become the voice of the company?
There are two things. So, one, for sure, there's a lot less woman founders. And now that I became a mom, I completely understand why. There's just a lot more pressure that the society puts on us to be amazing caretakers. And building a business oftentimes is criticized, why you're not at home, why you're not doing your duties as a mom. So, there's a lot of society pressure. And there's nothing wrong about stepping down and caring for your children. There's no more beautiful role than that. I'm just observing that's a lot harder for a woman to stay in the workforce. Now, once they do and they run the company, they, at least from the groups that I'm in, I'm observing a lot more self-doubt. I'm observing a lot more inner voice that says, I'm not enough, I'm not doing enough. And when they might be in front of the microphone, they might criticize themselves a lot. So I've just made a blunder right now. I couldn't remember how to pronounce something. For that kind of blunder, they're going to have a little voice inside of their head. I told you so. I told you so. You make these kind of mistakes. So there's for sure the loud inner critic, a lot louder than my men friends. And the second one is that there's a practical ability that women have, is that they want to do the practical things, whereas this doesn't feel quite practical to them, right? They want to make sure that they're doing the right things for the business in that way, and maybe somebody else can be the evangelist, someone else can do the talking, which is just based on how we grew up and how we expect. So we don't associate evangelism with something practical. And that's unfortunate because you learn a lot about strategy, you learn a lot about how to talk to your customers, the more courage you get to speak. So even if it feels uncomfortable, I think it's worth going deep there because there's a lot to learn.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Well, I have just two more questions, and those are the usuals on the pod. First one, what has been so far your biggest win and the biggest failure? And can be for you personally or for the company?
Biggest win for sure for myself and for the company is the ability to create the kind of culture that I wish I was part of when I was an employee. It's far from perfection, but I feel that there are a lot of things that are right in how we constructed the culture at Chili Piper. In terms of failure, it's something that I still grapple with and I'm still trying to figure out how to solve for, is how to bring the things that come with Alina the human and Alina the business person to work. Because Alina the human imagines that they can take care of everybody and everybody's going to be thriving and everybody's going to be happy. And then the realities of the business, where there are a lot of constraints that I have in terms of time, how I can help people and how I can employ people. And there's a tension there. Maybe it's a healthy tension, but it's a tension that I seek to figure out often, and what the right way to manage it is.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, the last question is always about hack, right? And it can be something, an unconventional trick that, worked magic for you once, or something that keeps bringing good results. And it can be related to any area of the business.
Whenever I feel stuck on a particular problem, and this applies to business, but it also applies to my personal life, um, I put it in writing. I put the challenge in writing. I put all the information that I have, and this allowed me to have a lot more insights to how struggles get formed, even internally or externally. And we create a lot of briefs about the challenge that we have and like ways to solve for it, because it's not always obvious. We think it's obvious when we think about it, but when we put it in paper, somehow we see a lot more. And if we manage to write it in a way where others can read it too, that they can contribute to it as well. The only reason why I'm able to put all my thoughts in writing, like literally all my thoughts in writing and share them with others, is because there's a book that I talk often about. It's called The Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg, that allows you to construct your thoughts in a way where others don't feel bothered by how you express yourself. So let's say that I would be bothered by something that my co-founder does. Let's assume that I would get annoyed that he makes marketing. He gets involved in with all sorts of marketing ideas, and he's distracting me. Let's assume that would be a problem. If I would say, you always distract me with your ideas, I can't get any work done, then he would not experience my feedback as a positive one. But instead, I would say, right now I'm trying to focus on these particular areas. I really find a lot of potential in all the things that you're coming up with, and I feel so excited by them. Would it be okay if you put them on paper and then I can look at them at a later stage, or have a request that would help me with my goals? This ability to form your requests and your thoughts in a way that others don't get bothered by is a superpower. And putting it in paper solves a lot of issues that are unnecessary. A lot of them.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see how it works. Well, thank you so much for sharing it. I think that's a great, and sometimes putting something on paper and just reviewing it again just takes away the entire thing completely. Like you just think about it again and you're like, what? What it wasn't supposed to be a conflict or a problem in the first place. So yeah, if you don't rush into it, I guess you have a good chance to avoid any kind of confrontation. So thanks a lot for sharing the hack and of course sharing the whole story. And I find your posts and what you're writing about very empowering, very honest. I guess it's not just my opinion. So thank you so much for doing this. And I guess keep being transparent. It's fun to see what you're doing. And like I said, hopefully you're expanding to Asia and we can talk about it next year.
Thank you, Anna, for bringing all the right topics to discuss, and it was a pleasure.
Sure, it was a pleasure for me. Thank you and take care.